History loves winners, but it rarely stops to ask at what cost. Today we speak of a man who destroyed his own ships so there could be no way back. His name was Hernán Cortés, and what he built was raised on the bones of an entire civilization. 1485, Medellín, in the poor Spanish province of Extremadura, a dry land where the younger sons of minor nobles had nothing to inherit but pride. Here, Hernán Cortés was born, into a family whose name carried more weight than their purse. The boy was groomed for university, Salamanca, law, a quiet clerk's career. But his temperament sat poorly with Latin grammar. He abandoned his studies at 17, leaving behind only vague rumors of a character that sought not knowledge, but opportunity. Spain of that era was obsessed with one idea: the Indies, the new world spoken of in every port since 1492. For a landless hidalgo, this was the only path upward. Not humility, but conquest. In 1504, at 19, Cortés sailed for Hispaniola, the island today shared by Haiti and the Dominican Republic. He came neither as soldier nor missionary. He came as a colonist, ready to claim land and labor by others' hands. The following years offer few dramatic stories. Notary, landowner, participant in punitive expeditions against the local population. An ordinary, unremarkable career of a man accumulating connections and capital. In 1511, he joined the conquest of Cuba under Diego Velázquez, a man who would soon become both his patron and his fiercest enemy. In Cuba, Cortés found what he sought: proximity to power. Velázquez made him his secretary, then alcalde of Santiago. Cortés was charming, ambitious, and skilled at becoming indispensable. But proximity to power also means proximity to its suspicion. Cortés clashed with Velázquez several times, once over a marriage he delayed and eventually entered into with Catalina Juárez. Their relationship remained strained for years to come. By 1518, rumors of rich lands to the west, where Mexico stands today, reached Cuba through returning expeditions. Velázquez decided to outfit a new fleet, and despite the future enmity between them, he entrusted its command to Cortés. It was a decision he would curse for the rest of his life. Cortés threw himself into preparing the expedition with almost manic energy, mortgaging his own property, borrowing money, recruiting men with promises of land and gold. The scale of the preparations alarmed Velázquez. Too much independence, too much personal power was concentrating in the hands of a man he did not fully trust. At the last moment, Velázquez reversed course, ordering Cortés removed from command. But the fleet was already outfitted, the men already recruited, and the ambition too great to turn back. On the night of November 18, 1518, Cortés put to sea before the recall order could catch him. Formally, this was mutiny against his own patron. The fleet, 11 ships, about 500 soldiers, 16 horses, moved along the Cuban coast, gathering supplies and men, knowing that behind them stood a man who had declared the expedition unlawful. Cortés alone at the ship's bow, his gaze fixed forward, a storm gathering on the horizon, a symbol of resolve with no way back. The fleet's arrival at the island of Cozumel, first contact with local Maya inhabitants on the shore, a wary but not hostile scene. Here the expedition gained its first truly valuable asset, not gold, but information. A Spaniard named Jerónimo de Aguilar, a shipwreck survivor who had lived 8 years among the Maya and knew their language. In March 1519, near the Tabasco River, a clash with local inhabitants ended in Spanish victory, thanks to firearms, steel, and horses the local warriors had never seen before. As a token of reconciliation, The defeated chiefs presented Cortés with gifts, including 20 enslaved women. Among them was a young woman named Malinali, known to history as Malinche. She spoke Nahuatl, the language of the Aztecs, and soon learned Spanish. Through double translation, Nahuatl to Maya to Spanish, and later directly, she became the voice without which the entire campaign would have been impossible. The founding of Veracruz, Spaniards driving the first post of the settlement into the ground against the backdrop of the sea, a formal composition of an official act. Then Cortés ordered the ships disabled, not dramatically burned, as the myth claims, but dismantled and scuttled, leaving only one. The men he led lost their path of retreat along with him. Advancing inland, Cortés learned the crucial fact. The Aztec Empire was no monolith. Dozens of peoples paid it tribute, while hating their rulers in Tenochtitlan. Tlaxcala, an independent state that had warred with the Aztecs for centuries, fought the Spanish fiercely at first, then, after heavy losses, entered an alliance. This decision would determine the outcome of the entire campaign. Without thousands of Tlaxcalan warriors, Cortés would have had no chance against Tenochtitlan. On the way to the capital, the expedition stopped at Cholula, a sacred city allied with the Aztecs. What happened there remains one of the darkest episodes of the campaign. According to Spanish chroniclers, Malinche learned of a plot and warned Cortés. He struck first, a massacre in which, by most estimates and archaeological findings, between 2,000 and 6,000 inhabitants died. Aztec and Tlaxcalan sources describe the motives differently. The full truth cannot be recovered here, only two conflicting accounts left by the victors and the survivors. Every great enterprise needs a justification. Sometimes it is faith, sometimes preemptive defense, and sometimes simply the absence of a witness able to object. On November 8, 1519, Cortés' expedition entered Tenochtitlan, a city on the water with a population greater than any European city of the time. The Spaniards were stunned. Canals, causeways, stepped pyramids, markets where, by some estimates, tens of thousands traded daily. On the causeway they were met by Moctezuma II, Tlatoani of the Aztecs, a ruler whose empire stretched from coast to coast. A legend rooted in later chronicles claims Moctezuma took Cortés for the returning god Quetzalcoatl. Modern historians view this version with skepticism. Moctezuma invited the Spaniards into the palace as guests, housing them with honor, a decision Aztec nobility would soon regret. Beneath the outward hospitality lay a confrontation both sides understood too well. Who truly held power in this city? Cortés commanded a handful of men in the heart of a city of tens of thousands. His only remaining asset was audacity. Days after arriving, Cortés took Moctezuma hostage in his own palace, formally maintaining an appearance of respect. The emperor continued to rule, at least outwardly, issuing orders under Spanish control. Meanwhile, Velázquez sent an expedition under Panfilo de Narváez with orders to arrest the mutineer. Cortés marched against Narváez and defeated the larger force, persuading most of the captured soldiers to join him. But while he won on the coast, catastrophe erupted in the capital. During the Toxcatl festival, Alvarado ordered an attack on unarmed Aztec nobles. The massacre, by most estimates, claimed hundreds of lives. Cortés returned not to a submissive capital, but to a besieged palace surrounded by an enraged population. Moctezuma, brought before the people, was, by Spanish accounts, killed by his own subjects as a traitor. Aztec sources claim otherwise. On the night of July 1st, 1520, the Spaniards attempted to break out of the city along the causeway, a slaughter on the water and bridges known as the Night of Sorrows. The losses were catastrophic. nearly all the seized gold. Dozens of horses drowned under the weight of plunder that soldiers refused to abandon, even at the cost of their lives. Retreating to Tlaxcala, Cortés found allies who had not turned away from him even after the defeat. Here, another ally Cortés had never asked for began its work. Smallpox, brought by Spanish ships. The epidemic devastated a huge portion of the Valley of Mexico's population, including the new ruler, Cuitláhuac. Over the following year, Cortés methodically built a new campaign, constructing brigantines, gathering allied warriors, cutting off the city's supply lines. The siege begins. Brigantines on the lake attack the causeways of Tenochtitlan. The capture of Cuauhtémoc as he attempted to flee across the lake. Tenochtitlan had fallen. Victory is rarely clean. More often, it is built half on audacity, half on a disease no one planned, and allies who will be betrayed at the first opportunity. On the ruins of Tenochtitlan, Cortés founded Mexico City. He became ruler of territories exceeding Spain itself, but the triumph was short-lived. The crown began curbing his power, first through advisors, then through direct oversight. Numerous legal proceedings pursued him for the rest of his life, though none was ever fully proven. In 1541, Cortés returned to Spain, not as a conqueror, but as a petitioner seeking an audience with the king. He died in 1547 in Castilleja de la Cuesta, in relative obscurity, far from the city that bore his name as a symbol of triumph. He destroyed his ships so there could be no way back, but a way back found itself anyway, in courtrooms, in disgrace, in a quiet death far from the city he built. The shadow of an emperor is always longer than the emperor himself. The only question is where it finally falls.